Hey there, Roothaven Grounds family. You know what blows my mind? While we're out here installing drip irrigation systems and scheduling our smart sprinklers, the ancient Egyptians were growing lush gardens in one of the harshest deserts on Earth without wasting a single drop of water. And they did it for 3,000 years. I'm not talking about some primitive farming that barely kept them alive. These folks cultivated grapes, figs, pomegranates, and stunning ornamental gardens that would make our modern landscapes jealous. The kicker? They accomplished all this in a place where it rains maybe once a year, if that. So today, I'm sharing the ingenious water-saving techniques that sustained Egyptian civilization, and more importantly, how you can use these ancient secrets in your own garden starting this weekend. The Egyptians didn't fight against their desert environment. They worked with it, and their primary technique was something called basin irrigation. Now, before you think this is just fancy terminology for digging a hole, let me explain why this method is absolutely revolutionary for today's water-conscious gardener. Basin irrigation involves creating shallow depressions around your plants that capture and hold water exactly where it's needed. The Egyptians would construct these earthen basins around individual trees or groups of plants, then fill them during the Nile's annual flood. But here's the genius part. They designed these basins with slightly raised edges that prevented any water from escaping. Every drop went directly into the root zone. You can replicate this in your garden by creating circular berms around your trees and shrubs, about 4 to 6 inches high, and extending to the drip line. When you water, fill the basin and let it slowly percolate down. This method reduces water waste by up to 70% compared to traditional overhead watering because you're eliminating runoff and ensuring deep root penetration. I've been using this technique in my own garden for 3 years, and my water bill tells the success story better than I ever could. The Egyptians invented the shaduf around 1500 BCE, and this simple machine changed everything. It's essentially a long pole balanced on a pivot point, with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other. Operators would dip the bucket into the Nile, and the counterweight made lifting gallons of water feel effortless. Now, you might be wondering why I'm telling you about ancient machinery when we have hoses. Here's why it matters. The shaduf taught the Egyptians to be intentional about every gallon they moved. They couldn't just turn on a tap and zone out. Each bucket was delivered to exactly where it was needed, which created a culture of water mindfulness that we've completely lost. The modern application isn't about building a shaduf in your backyard, though that would be pretty cool. It's about adopting that same intentionality. Try hand watering your vegetable garden with a watering can once a week instead of using the hose. You'll immediately notice which plants actually need water and which ones have been getting overwatered by your automated system. This practice has helped me reduce my garden's water consumption by nearly 40% while producing healthier plants. Walk through any ancient Egyptian garden, and you'd notice something interesting. They never planted in the blazing sun without protection. Instead, they created layered canopies where tall date palms provided shade for grapevines, which in turn shaded smaller fruit trees, which protected ground-level vegetables and herbs. This technique, called companion planting or guild planting today, does something miraculous for water conservation. That top canopy reduces soil temperature by up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which dramatically decreases evaporation rates. The Egyptians understood that protecting the soil surface was just as important as watering it. Start implementing this in your space by planting heat-sensitive crops like lettuce and spinach in the shade of taller plants like tomatoes or corn. If you're working with perennials, consider underplanting your fruit trees with shade-tolerant herbs like mint or lemon balm. I've created several of these mini ecosystems in my garden, and they require half the water of my conventional rows while producing more diverse harvests. Here's something that honestly surprised me when I dug into Egyptian agricultural texts. They were like Really obsessive about covering bare soil. They used everything from Nile River silt to chopped papyrus reeds, decaying palm fronds, and even domestic animal bedding. Basically, any organic material that could decompose went right back onto the growing beds. This wasn't just about soil fertility, though that was certainly a benefit. The primary purpose was water retention. A 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch reduces water evaporation by up to 75%, keeps soil temperatures stable, and slowly releases moisture back into the ground during those hot days. The Egyptians knew that exposed soil was just wasted water. In your garden, you can totally replicate this by maintaining a constant mulch layer around all your plants. Shredded leaves, grass clippings, straw, and wood chips all work beautifully. I refresh my mulch every season, and honestly, the difference is staggering. During our recent heat wave, my mulched beds stayed moist for 5 days between waterings, while my neighbor's bare soil needed daily irrigation. The Egyptians built their entire agricultural calendar around the Nile's predictable flooding. They didn't try to maintain lush gardens all year round. Instead, they planted strategically, grew intensively during optimal conditions, and accepted dormancy periods. This rhythm created sustainable gardens that could thrive for literally thousands of years. You can apply this principle by aligning your planting schedule with your region's natural rainfall patterns. Instead of fighting your climate, work with it. Plant water-hungry crops during your rainy season, and switch to drought-tolerant varieties during dry periods. In my zone, I've stopped trying to grow thirsty vegetables in July and August. Instead, I plant them in early spring and late fall, when natural rainfall does most of the work. This approach also means embracing seasonal dormancy. Let parts of your garden rest instead of forcing everything to produce 12 months a year. Your water usage will plummet, and your soil will honestly thank you for the recovery time. Egyptian gardeners didn't water frequently, they just couldn't afford to. Instead, they watered deeply and infrequently, which trained plant roots to grow down rather than spreading shallow near the surface. Deep roots access moisture reserves that shallow roots completely miss, creating naturally drought-resistant plants. Modern gardeners, though, we tend to do the opposite. We water a little bit every day, which keeps the soil surface moist but encourages roots to stay shallow. Then we wonder why our plants wilt the moment we skip a watering. The Egyptian method requires patience, but honestly, the payoff is huge. For established plants, water deeply once or twice a week, rather than daily. Give them enough water to penetrate 12 to 18 inches down, then let the soil dry out before watering again. Your plants might look a little stressed at first as their roots adjust, but within a few weeks, they'll develop those deep root systems that made Egyptian gardens legendary for their resilience. The brilliant thing about these ancient Egyptian techniques is that they don't require expensive equipment or complicated systems. They just require a shift in perspective. From fighting your environment to working with it, from automated convenience to intentional stewardship, from constant intervention to patient observation. Start with one technique. Build those basins around your trees this weekend. Add that mulch layer you've been meaning to get to. Try hand-watering one bed to reconnect with your plant's actual needs. Small changes compound into revolutionary results, just like they did 3,000 years ago in the Egyptian desert. If these ancient secrets resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our upcoming videos, where I'll be demonstrating several of these techniques in real time in my own garden. And share this with a fellow gardener who's struggling with their water bill or trying to create a more sustainable landscape. Together, we're building a community of water-wise gardeners who prove that ancient wisdom and modern challenges are a perfect match. Now get out there and start your own garden revolution. Those Egyptian gardeners are counting on us to carry their legacy forward.